Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift off to a place where sleep wasn't just a part of life, it was a sacred practice. Imagine lying on a soft bed, bathed in the warm glow of an oil lamp, surrounded by the sounds of the Nile's gentle currents. The Egyptians didn't just snooze like we do after a long day. No, they believed sleep was a profound connection to the divine, and your dreams weren't just random, but messages from the gods. You probably won't survive this journey through ancient Egypt's sleep rituals, after all. They had a lot of quirky habits, like slathering themselves in oils and sleeping with their heads elevated by pillows made from stone. But hey, if you're ready for it, this adventure will guide you through their nights, their dreams, and the way they rested mind, body, and spirit. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to post where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. I'm always curious where my sleepy travelers are from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's begin with the first secret of sleep in ancient Egypt, how sacred this whole process truly was. Imagine, sleep wasn't just an activity to recharge. It was believed to be a state of spiritual renewal, a time when you were closest to the divine. Ancient Egyptians viewed sleep as more than a bodily function. They considered it essential to one's health and well-being. But here's the twist. It wasn't just the common folk who revered sleep. It was especially important to pharaohs, the divine rulers, who needed the perfect rest to maintain their connection with the gods. Historians still argue whether Egyptian sleep practices were mostly religious or medical, but one thing is clear. The rituals around sleep weren't something they took lightly. They believed that through the act of sleeping, a person could rejuvenate not just physically but spiritually. As a result, sleep was often treated as a doorway to the divine, a liminal space between wakefulness and the mysterious world of dreams. Now imagine you're one of them, preparing for the night. You wash away the day's dust, layer your body with oils, and maybe offer a prayer or two before closing your eyes. In this world, sleep wasn't just about shutting down. It was about opening up to higher planes of existence. Imagine being a pharaoh, a being considered a living god. Your dreams weren't just something to forget. They were messages, warnings, prophecies, insights. You were expected to interpret them, to understand what the gods had to say. Think about it. You're lying there, resting in a lavish bed, your head elevated by a stone pillow, feeling the soft breeze from the Nile. You might not know it yet, but your dreams are already on their way to guide you. As you drift further into this Egyptian night, let's focus on the pharaoh, the ruler who had a sleep routine unlike any other. For them, sleep was a sacred ritual, not just a moment of relaxation after a long day of ruling and temple ceremonies. Pharaohs didn't just go to bed. They prepared for an experience of divine connection and personal renewal. Imagine being a pharaoh in your grand palace, surrounded by treasures and servants. Yet the most important part of your night is the sleep you get, knowing it might affect the fate of Egypt itself. Historians still argue whether the pharaoh's special sleep practices were mostly symbolic or practical, but one thing is certain: they were unique. Pharaohs were known to sleep in sacred rooms, often near temples or within the palace's inner sanctum. These areas weren't just comfortable. They were believed to have spiritual significance. The air itself, thick with incense and the hum of whispered prayers, was thought to align the pharaoh's body with the cosmos. You drift off not just to recover from the day's work, but to be attuned with the divine forces governing the universe. During these nighttime rituals, specific items were always involved. Soft, embroidered pillows, often filled with luxurious materials like feathers, were used to keep the pharaoh's head elevated. But here's the twist. The pillow wasn't just about comfort. Some believe these headrests were designed to keep the pharaoh's neck in perfect alignment, ensuring that they could properly receive visions in their sleep. Your body needs to be in perfect alignment to maintain a harmonious connection with the gods, right? Of course, the modern world might scoff at the idea of an ergonomic pillow being divine, but the Egyptians had a different understanding of how the physical body and spirit were linked. While you rest in the pharaoh's palace, attendants would be sure the room was completely dark, ensuring there were no distractions, no flickering lights or disturbances. Sleep in the ancient world was treated as a time for complete renewal. This was their form of sleep hygiene, long before the modern era came up with fancy terms like blue light or sleep schedules. Instead, the idea of rest was spiritual and sacred. The pharaoh, in particular, had to maintain perfect mental clarity to rule Egypt effectively, and sleep played a key role in that. You can almost picture it, the room quiet, save for the soft rustling of reeds from the Nile outside. Incense burns gently, filling the air with sweet aromas that seem to carry you into a deep, restful slumber. All around you, silence reigns as your mind prepares to receive messages from the gods themselves. As the pharaoh, you have the responsibility to interpret these dreams, as they might reveal important advice or prophecy. This is where things get interesting. Dream interpretation wasn't just a personal hobby. It was a divine skill. Historians still argue whether the practice of dream interpretation was exclusive to pharaohs or shared among the elite. But what's certain is that sleep was far more than mere rest. For the pharaoh, it was an art, a science, and a divine gift. Now that we've seen how pharaohs treated sleep as a divine experience, let's shift our focus to something just as intriguing, the Egyptian belief in dreams as a gateway to the divine. To the ancient Egyptians, dreams weren't random. They were seen as direct messages from the gods, filled with symbolic meaning and guidance. If you were sleeping in ancient Egypt, it wasn't just about rest. It was about receiving divine insight, maybe even foreseeing the future or understanding hidden truths. Dream interpretation in Egypt was a respected practice. The Egyptians had an entire system dedicated to understanding the messages of their dreams, often through trained priests or scholars. These dream interpreters were highly valued, as they held the keys to deciphering the hidden meanings behind a night's visions. The sacred texts, including the famous dream book of ancient Egypt, outlined the meanings of various dreams, from simple visions of animals to more complex symbols like the sun and moon. Everything had a meaning. Historians still argue over the exact details of how these dreams were interpreted, but the practice was undoubtedly widespread. Imagine that you're an average Egyptian, lying in your bed, surrounded by incense and soft noises of the Nile outside. You fall into a deep slumber, and suddenly, you dream of a snake slithering toward you. In modern terms, that might be an unsettling nightmare. But in ancient Egypt, a snake could symbolize transformation or divine protection. The dream interpreters would tell you exactly what it meant, helping you understand its significance in your life. Egyptians believed that dreams could warn of impending danger or offer advice on how to improve one's life. But it wasn't all serious business. Dreaming of an animal might mean you were being guided to adopt certain virtues, like bravery or wisdom. The Egyptians took this quite seriously. Pharaohs, in particular, were said to have had elaborate dreams that directly influenced their decisions. These dreams were interpreted not only as personal revelations, but also as divine messages that could affect the fate of an entire nation. But the real mystery lies in how these dreamers entered such deep states of consciousness. Was it simply the power of suggestion, or did ancient Egyptians possess some hidden knowledge that we've since lost? Perhaps it was the environment they created, one of total serenity and ritual, that allowed them to tap into a deeper realm of thought. Or maybe it was the incense, with its rich scents, that helped guide them into a dream state that we might only imagine today. Now picture it again. You're sleeping soundly in ancient Egypt, and just as you drift off, you feel the presence of something more, something beyond the physical world. The quiet of the room wraps around you like a cocoon. The night air smells of lotus flowers, and the soft rustle of the reeds outside adds a natural rhythm to your sleep. You slip into a world where the gods communicate through symbols, sending you visions of animals, landscapes, and strange, otherworldly figures. When you awake, you're left with a sense of clarity, one that feels as though it's not from your mind, but from the gods themselves. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians truly believed in the prophetic power of dreams or if it was more a cultural norm. Either way, what's undeniable is that their approach to sleep was much deeper than mere rest. It was a means of connecting to the very essence of life, fate, and divine will. Now that we've explored the sacred importance of sleep and the deep connection to dreams in ancient Egypt, Let's take a closer look at the practical side of things. The bedtime rituals Egyptians followed to ensure they had the best possible rest. Imagine a time when sleep wasn't just about collapsing into bed after a long day. It was a well-practiced ritual, designed not only to relax the body, but also to invite divine favor. The Egyptians were keen on ensuring that their bodies and minds were perfectly aligned before sleep, creating an environment that fostered relaxation and spiritual renewal. For the common people, it may have been as simple as washing away the dirt of the day and settling into bed. But for the elite, like priests, noblemen, and pharaohs, the process was far more elaborate. Historians still debate the exact routines, but one thing is clear. Preparation for sleep in Egypt was as ceremonial as the waking day. For instance, people would often anoint themselves with oils and perfumes before heading to bed. These were no ordinary oils. They were rich in scents like frankincense, myrrh, and cinnamon, designed to calm the mind and body. The oils were thought to have healing properties, not just for the skin, but for the soul. The scent would fill the air, creating a calming atmosphere, setting the stage for a peaceful and meaningful sleep. The Egyptians believed that certain smells had the power to communicate with the divine, to bridge the gap between the physical and spiritual realms. Picture this. You've just finished your evening meal, and now, in the cool night air, you're preparing for rest. Your attendants are there, gently massaging your skin with fragrant oils, soothing you into a state of tranquility. The smell of frankincense rises up, mingling with the soft glow of oil lamps flickering on the sides of the room. The bed, adorned with linen sheets and soft pillows, beckons. You know this isn't just sleep. It's a sacred act of renewal, a time to reconnect with the gods. And it wasn't just about oils and fragrances. Egyptian beds were often made from wooden frames, sometimes inlaid with gold, precious stones, and intricate carvings. These beds were not just functional. They were symbols of status, beauty, and divine favor. You would lie down, and the bed would cradle you, designed to keep you comfortable while also aligning your body perfectly for a restful night. But the real magic lay in what happened after you laid your head down. The sleep wasn't just about comfort. It was about ritual. The room around you would be quiet. No sounds of the marketplace or bustling life outside. The windows would be closed to keep the evening winds at bay, and the room would be lit by soft, flickering candlelight or oil lamps, casting shadows that seemed to move in rhythm with your thoughts. Historians still wonder how much these rituals influenced the actual quality of sleep. Was it the oils, the environment, or the deep belief in divine protection that led to the peaceful rest the Egyptians valued so highly? Perhaps it was all of these things combined, a holistic approach to sleep that involved both mind and body, not just a simple act of lying down. Whatever the case, one thing is for certain. In ancient Egypt, sleep wasn't just an end to the day. It was a process of sacred renewal, a necessary part of life that connected you to the gods and your health. As you settle deeper into this ancient world, imagine what it would be like to sleep like an Egyptian. You lie back, your mind at ease from the day's stresses. Your body feels nourished and protected by the oils that soak into your skin. The room around you is quiet, save for the faint sounds of the Nile, and you feel as though your dreams are already beginning to take shape in the air. You fall asleep, knowing that you're not just resting, you're connecting with something much greater than yourself. As you continue to rest in the ancient Egyptian world, surrounded by scents and quiet serenity, let's dive into how sleep itself was a means of connection, not just with the gods, but with the land. Egyptians believed that sleeping in certain sacred spaces, like near temples or shrines, brought blessings and protection. To sleep wasn't merely to rest. It was to tap into a divine force that governed both the waking and sleeping worlds. For the ancient Egyptians, the night was not just darkness. It was a realm of deep spiritual significance. Imagine being a priest or high-ranking official, lying in a bed within the inner sanctum of a temple. The space is cool, dimly lit, and filled with the scent of burning incense. As you drift off, you feel the presence of something greater than yourself. Maybe it's the god of the temple you're near, or perhaps it's the spirit of the pharaoh himself, watching over the city. Either way, the night brings with it a powerful sense of connection to the divine. You're not just sleeping to recover from a day of hard work. You're sleeping to align your soul with the gods. Historians still debate whether this belief was grounded in actual ritualistic practices or whether it was a cultural myth that reinforced the power of sacred spaces. But it's undeniable that the Egyptians saw their temples and burial sites as not just places of worship, but sanctuaries where sleep and the divine intersected. These sacred spaces were often thought to have a protective aura, guarding the sleeper from evil spirits or disturbances. It was believed that if you slept near a temple, the presence of the god would protect you from nightmares and bad dreams. Now, let's think about the ancient Egyptians' understanding of the connection between sleep and health. The relationship between mind, body, and spirit was critical in their overall view of well-being. In fact, the act of sleep was integral to their health practices. Sleep was often seen as a time for the body to heal, and Egyptians believed that the most restful and healing sleep could only be achieved through spiritual alignment. It wasn't just about lying down to rest. It was about achieving the right state of mind, body, and soul. For example, sleep was deeply intertwined with the practice of medicine in ancient Egypt. Priests who doubled as doctors would often recommend rest and sleep as part of their healing practices. If someone was ill, one of the first suggestions would be to sleep in a calm and sacred space, perhaps near a temple where the healing power of the gods could be felt. They believed that sleep had the power to restore balance to the body, allowing for recovery not just physically, but spiritually. Imagine lying down in one of these sacred spaces, where the scent of incense lingers in the air, and the faint hum of chanting priests can be heard in the background. You close your eyes and feel the warmth of the evening air brush against your skin. As you drift off, you know that the sleep you're about to experience isn't just a break from the day. It's a time to let the gods heal you, both inside and out. This sleep, in its sacred setting, is more than rest. It's the most restorative thing you can do for your health, body, and soul. Historians still argue whether Egyptians viewed sleep more as a religious practice or a medical one, but it's clear that sleep in this culture was not just for physical recovery. It was a spiritual act, a way to reconnect with the divine forces of the universe, to realign your energies, and to ensure that you could wake up fully restored, both mentally and physically. Sleep was a bridge between the mortal world and the eternal one, where you could seek guidance from the gods and emerge ready to face another day of life and work in Egypt. As we continue exploring the sacred and restorative nature of sleep in ancient Egypt, let's shift our attention to the more direct connection between sleep and health in their medical practices. For the Egyptians, health wasn't simply the absence of disease. It was a delicate balance of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Sleep played a significant role in achieving this balance, and many physicians of the time would prescribe rest as an essential component of healing. Sleep was considered a natural medicine, a vital part of the recovery process that worked in tandem with physical treatments and spiritual rituals. Imagine being a patient in ancient Egypt, coming to a healer for help. You may have been suffering from fatigue, stress, or even illness, and the first piece of advice you'd receive from the healer is to rest. But not just any rest. Your sleep had to be intentional. You would be instructed to sleep in specific, peaceful conditions, perhaps near a temple or within a sacred space. It was believed that such settings would enhance the healing process. The soft sounds of the Nile and the incense filling the room weren't just for comfort. They were part of the healing ritual. In a sense, the environment itself became an integral part of the treatment. Historians still debate how much of this healing philosophy was grounded in actual medical knowledge versus spiritual belief. However, there's no denying that sleep was seen as an essential healing tool. In ancient Egyptian medicine, sleep was often seen as a way to restore the balance of the body, to give the body time to repair itself. Sleep was restorative not only for the physical body, but for the mind and soul as well. Rest wasn't just about the absence of activity, it was about entering a state of spiritual and physical renewal. In addition to the idea of sleep as medicine, the Egyptians also had specific rituals designed to encourage healing through rest. If you were feeling unwell, you might be prescribed specific sleep positions, oils, or even sound therapy in the form of soothing music or prayers. The belief was that rest in these controlled conditions allowed the body to naturally heal and rebalance itself. You might sleep with your head elevated, as the Egyptians believed that proper alignment allowed energy to flow freely throughout the body, aiding in healing and maintaining overall well-being. But sleep in ancient Egypt wasn't just about physical health. It was also a way to restore the mind. Ancient Egyptians recognized the link between stress, mental health, and physical health. Much like today, they understood that the mind and body were intricately connected. If you were stressed, exhausted, or overwhelmed, your body would suffer, and your ability to heal would be diminished. The Egyptian prescription for such ailments was simple: rest. Sleep was seen as a way to ease the mental burden and restore clarity. Imagine this. After a long day of hard work or facing personal struggles, you're guided to a peaceful space. The soft fragrance of oils fills the air. The sounds of the Nile flow gently outside your window, and the light of the evening sun casts a soft glow across your bed. As you lie down and close your eyes, you allow yourself to let go of the weight of the day. You feel your body relax, your thoughts slowing, and your mind at ease. In that moment, you realize that this sleep isn't just about resting. It's a powerful form of self-care, a tool for restoration that aligns your body and soul. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians' medical understanding of sleep was as advanced as we think. But one thing is clear: they saw sleep as an indispensable part of their health system. Sleep wasn't just for the body. It was for the mind and spirit as well, a holistic approach that tied into their larger worldview of balance and harmony. Now that we've examined the connection between sleep and physical health in ancient Egypt, let's delve into the fascinating relationship between sleep and the afterlife in Egyptian culture. The Egyptians saw life and death as part of a continuous cycle, with sleep acting as a bridge between the two realms. For them, sleep wasn't simply a temporary escape, it was a preparatory step toward eternal rest. Sleep, in many ways, mirrored the death experience, and the way they viewed sleep often reflected their beliefs about the afterlife. Imagine this. You're lying down to sleep in ancient Egypt, and as you drift off, you're not just preparing for another day, you're preparing for the next great journey of your existence. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not an end, but a continuation, and sleep was a precursor to that eternal rest. It was thought that, in sleep, your soul would temporarily leave your body and travel into the realm of the gods, where it would be judged and guided for its next steps in the afterlife. Historians still debate the exact nature of how sleep and death were connected in Egyptian thought. But what's clear is that the act of sleeping was seen as a rehearsal for the afterlife. In their burial rituals, the Egyptians created elaborate tombs and provided their deceased with everything they might need for their journey into eternity. These tombs often included beds, and even objects designed for comfort during sleep, symbolizing the belief that the soul would need rest as it transitioned from the physical world to the spiritual one. Now, picture yourself as a member of the elite in ancient Egypt, lying in your tomb. It's quiet, and the air is still, filled with the scent of incense that once permeated the temples. Around you, your belongings are carefully arranged, perhaps your favorite objects, food offerings, and symbols of your wealth and status. The tomb is not only a resting place, it is a sacred space designed to ease your transition into the next life. Just as you would sleep during your life to rejuvenate your body, you are now at rest, waiting for your soul's journey into eternity. The Egyptians believed that the transition from life to death was not immediate, but gradual. Much like sleep, death was seen as a process, and the deceased would go through stages of judgment and renewal. To prepare for this, the deceased were often laid to rest in beds designed for their comfort, surrounded by tools to help them on their journey. Sleep, in this sense, was a sacred practice that not only rejuvenated the body but also prepared the soul for its eternal rest. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians truly saw sleep as a direct rehearsal for death, or if the parallels were more symbolic. However, it's evident that they viewed the sleep experience as something more than a simple biological function. It was a preparation for what lay beyond. For the ancient Egyptians, sleep was a time to rest, but it was also a time to connect with the divine and to ready oneself for the ultimate journey into the afterlife. In this world, the line between life and death sleep, and eternity was blurry. Just as you would wake up each morning to continue your life, you would also rest each night in preparation for the final rest. And when the time came, you would cross into the next world, where the same peace and tranquility of sleep would carry you forward. This cyclical view of existence, where life, death, and sleep were intricately connected, gave the Egyptians a unique perspective on the passage of time and the nature of the soul. As you drift off in the sacred calm of your tomb, imagine the journey ahead, a journey that starts with rest, continues through spiritual renewal, and eventually carries you into the eternal afterlife. Sleep in the Egyptian mind wasn't just an act of physical recovery. It was the gateway to something far greater, a transition into eternity. As we journey through the ancient Egyptian belief system, it's time to explore another intriguing aspect of their sleep culture, the art of napping. We often associate naps with a quick reprieve during the day, but in ancient Egypt, napping wasn't just a simple indulgence. It was seen as a vital and even divine practice. The Egyptians understood the importance of rest throughout the day, and they recognized the need for short, restorative periods of sleep to maintain energy and mental clarity. Imagine it's the middle of the day, and the sun is high above, casting a golden glow over the bustling streets of Egypt. You're working in the fields or perhaps in a workshop, and the heat is unbearable. The Egyptians didn't just push through. No, they knew the power of a short nap to rejuvenate both body and mind. Napping wasn't just for the elite or the rich. It was a common practice for Egyptians from all walks of life, especially because it was believed to have a significant impact on both physical health and overall productivity. Historians still argue about the exact societal roles of naps in Egypt, but there's no doubt that short rests were seen as essential. In fact, it's believed that Egyptians structured their days around periods of rest. The workday would often be divided, with time for a nap taken in the hottest part of the afternoon. This practice helped individuals maintain their focus and energy during long, exhausting days. You'd likely sleep for a brief period, allowing the heat to pass and the cooler evening air to settle in before you would resume your daily tasks. What's especially interesting is that napping wasn't just a break for physical rejuvenation. It was also thought to have spiritual benefits. Just as sleep at night was connected to dreams and the divine, naps during the day were also considered to have a connection to the gods. It was believed that by resting in the afternoon, one could achieve a state of spiritual clarity and mental peace. The Egyptians viewed these naps as a way to maintain balance throughout the day, ensuring that both body and spirit were aligned. Picture yourself in the heat of the Egyptian afternoon, lying on a reed mat beneath a tree, its shade offering relief from the sun's intense rays. You close your eyes, and for a brief moment, the world around you falls silent. The rhythmic sound of the Nile's flow and the occasional chirp of insects provide a peaceful soundtrack as you drift off for a short nap. You awaken feeling not just physically refreshed, but mentally and spiritually aligned, ready to face whatever the rest of the day brings. In Egyptian society, naps were seen as a way to honor the natural rhythms of the day. The Egyptians recognized that sleep was not just for the night. It was a continuous process of balance. The act of napping, much like their nighttime rituals, was woven into the fabric of their culture. It was a reminder that rest in all forms was a necessary component of a healthy and harmonious life, whether it was during the quiet of the night or in the heat of the afternoon. Sleep, whether long or short, was an essential practice for both the body and the spirit. Historians still debate the specifics of nap culture in Egypt, but what's undeniable is that they valued rest as a tool for maintaining energy, clarity, and connection to the divine. These short periods of sleep helped people stay in balance, ensuring that they could keep working, worshiping, and living in harmony with the natural world around them. As you continue to drift through this ancient world, imagine the calming effect of these small, midday naps. The simple act of pausing, resting, and rejuvenating becomes an essential part of the rhythm of your day, creating a sense of peace that is felt not just physically, but spiritually. As we continue our journey through the sleep practices of ancient Egypt, let's focus on an intriguing aspect of their rest rituals: the way they viewed sleep positions. You may not think that how you sleep would make much of a difference, but for the Egyptians, your posture during rest wasn't just a matter of comfort. It was deeply symbolic and held spiritual significance. The way you positioned your body while sleeping was believed to impact the quality of your sleep, your health, and even your connection to the gods. In ancient Egypt, sleep was seen as more than just a way to recover from the day's fatigue. It was a chance to align yourself with the divine. This meant that how you lay down at night, and even how you positioned your body, could influence the way your soul interacted with the spiritual world. Pharaohs and priests, in particular, were expected to sleep in specific ways to ensure the perfect balance between body and spirit. For example, many Egyptians preferred sleeping with their heads elevated, often using wooden or stone headrests. These headrests weren't just about comfort, far from it. They were carefully designed to keep the head in an ideal position for spiritual alignment. Historians still argue whether the use of headrests had any real effect on sleep quality, but one thing is clear. The Egyptians believed that sleep posture had significant spiritual implications. These headrests, often made of wood or ivory, kept the sleeper's head slightly raised, which not only promoted better breathing and circulation but was also thought to help with energy flow during sleep. The idea was that a perfectly aligned body would allow a smoother connection with the divine while sleeping, offering clearer visions and more potent dreams. Now, picture yourself in the soft glow of an oil lamp, lying down on a bed with a wooden headrest beneath your neck. The cool night air brushes against your skin, and the sound of the Nile murmurs in the distance. You're ready for sleep, but you carefully adjust your posture, ensuring your head is elevated just enough to achieve the perfect alignment. You know that this subtle adjustment could help you enter a deeper, more restful sleep, one where the gods are closer and your dreams are clearer. Interestingly, the importance of sleep position wasn't just limited to the elite. Even common Egyptians, while not always using luxurious headrests, had an awareness of posture's role in sleep. People would often lie on simple beds made of reeds or wood, but the concept of aligning one's body for optimal rest was ingrained in everyday life. Even in the simplest of settings, the idea that sleep could affect one's physical and spiritual well-being was ever present. Historians still debate the practical purposes of these headrests. Some argue they were purely functional, helping people sleep without damaging their hair or elaborate hairstyles. Others suggest the spiritual belief behind them was the primary driver, with Egyptians seeking to improve the quality of their dreams and sleep by maintaining proper posture. Regardless of the exact purpose, there's no doubt that sleep position was a key part of the Egyptian approach to rest. Imagine now that you're drifting into sleep on that reed bed, your head slightly elevated on a stone headrest and your body perfectly aligned. You feel as though the weight of the day has disappeared, and your body, with its subtle alignment, feels at peace. Your soul is ready to leave the physical world for a moment and enter the realm of dreams, where you might receive messages from the gods, warnings of the future, or simply spiritual guidance. In ancient Egypt, the act of sleeping, combined with these careful positions, wasn't just a necessary bodily function. It was a sacred practice that could influence the health of both body and soul. The Egyptians understood that in order to sleep well, you needed more than just a soft bed. You needed to align yourself spiritually, physically, and mentally. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most fascinating aspects of sleep in ancient Egypt, the Book of Dreams. While we often think of dreams as personal experiences, in ancient Egypt, they were a profound and highly structured part of life, closely tied to the spiritual world. The Book of Dreams wasn't just a collection of stories. It was an essential tool that allowed the Egyptians to interpret and understand their dreams, a guide to the divine messages they believed their sleep carried. If you lived in ancient Egypt, it's likely that your dreams weren't simply fleeting fragments of your subconscious mind. No, they were messages from the gods, and interpreting them correctly could change the course of your life. Imagine you wake up from a strange, vivid dream. Perhaps you saw a large bird flying overhead, or you were standing before a powerful god who spoke to you in symbols. You didn't just shrug it off. Instead, you would consult the Book of Dreams, a sacred text that provided interpretations for every type of dream imaginable. This wasn't just for the pharaohs or high priests. Dream interpretation was widely practiced. and there were even classes in temples dedicated to this art. Historians still argue about the extent to which the Book of Dreams influenced daily life in Egypt, but what's clear is that dreams were viewed with immense importance. The ancient Egyptians believed that the gods spoke to them through their dreams, often offering guidance or warnings. And much like modern-day dream dictionaries, the Book of Dreams helped the people decode these divine messages. If you dreamt of a crocodile, for example, it wasn't just an image of an animal, it was a symbol with specific meaning, maybe warning of danger or symbolizing protection. If you dreamt of a river overflowing, it could represent emotional turbulence or an impending change. Imagine yourself lying down in the quiet of the night, feeling the cool breeze brush against your skin. You fall asleep, and a strange dream begins to take shape. Perhaps you find yourself standing in the midst of a great storm, feeling the power of the winds around you. As the dream unfolds, you remember that if you can understand its meaning, it might help you with a problem or decision in your waking life. When you wake up, you recall the dream in vivid detail. Without hesitation, you reach for the Book of Dreams and you start to interpret its symbols. You find that the storm symbolizes an inner conflict, something you've been struggling with for weeks. Now, with this newfound knowledge, you can approach the issue in your waking life with greater clarity. This Book of Dreams wasn't just a personal guide, it was a social one. Dream interpreters, who were highly respected in Egyptian society, used it as a reference to help others understand their dreams. The practice was seen as an essential part of Egyptian life because it offered a direct line to the gods. Through the Book of Dreams, Egyptians could connect with divine knowledge and interpret messages that shaped everything from personal relationships to political decisions. Historians still debate whether the Book of Dreams was purely a religious tool or if it served more practical purposes, like helping people cope with anxiety or fear. However, what remains certain is that Egyptians regarded dreams as far more than random occurrences. For them, dreams were a significant spiritual and social tool, an essential part of the fabric of daily life. Now, picture yourself consulting the Book of Dreams after waking from a vivid and mysterious dream. As you read through its pages, you realize that your dream holds a deeper meaning, one that will guide you toward better decisions in your life. This book becomes not just a physical object, but a gateway to a deeper understanding of your life and your connection to the divine. As we continue our exploration of ancient Egyptian sleep, let's take a look at how the changing seasons influenced the way Egyptians approached rest. For them, sleep wasn't just linked to the body's need for rest. It was closely tied to the natural world around them. The Egyptians were keen observers of the natural rhythms of their environment, and these rhythms shaped everything from their agricultural practices to their social calendars. Sleep, in this context, was no different. It was influenced by the ebb and flow of the seasons, from the scorching heat of summer to the cooler months of the year. Imagine it's the height of summer in ancient Egypt. The sun blazes in the sky, and the Nile is full, its waters teeming with life. You've just finished working in the fields, and the air is thick with heat. It's in these moments that Egyptians knew the value of rest. They had learned to adapt to the seasonal changes, and they understood that the intense heat of the summer meant the body required more frequent periods of rest. Much like today, when the temperature rises, the Egyptians knew that midday naps were not only welcome, they were essential. These naps allowed the body to recover from the heat, enabling them to be more productive and more connected to the natural world. Historians still debate how much of a direct connection the Egyptians made between sleep and seasonal changes, but there's little doubt that the rhythms of the Nile and the weather were central to their way of life. The flood season, for example, would have influenced when people slept, as it marked a time when agricultural work slowed down. During this period, when the fields were inundated with water and the crops couldn't be tended to as easily, the Egyptians had more time to focus on other aspects of life. Sleep during this time would have been seen as a way to rest and recharge before the hard work of planting and harvesting began again. Now, picture it. It's the flood season, and you're lying on your bed, feeling the cool night air wash over you. The harvest is done, and there's a calmness in the air as the river swells with water. The change in seasons brings a sense of peace, a time when you can rest and rejuvenate. You know that when the river recedes and the fields are ready for work again, your body and mind will be refreshed and ready to take on the next season's challenges. In addition to the natural rhythms of the Nile, the changing seasons also affected the way the Egyptians approached their sleep environments. During the hot summer months, many Egyptians slept outdoors or in open air spaces to catch the breeze from the river. This allowed them to escape the stifling heat of their homes, which were often made from sun-dried mud bricks that trapped heat. The cooler evenings offered a perfect opportunity to rest outside, where the natural sounds of the Nile could lull you into a peaceful slumber. Historians still wonder whether these outdoor sleeping arrangements had a direct effect on the quality of sleep. Did the sounds of the river, combined with the cool night air, contribute to a more restful night's sleep? It's hard to say for sure, but it's certainly possible. The Egyptians were keenly aware of the power of their environment, and they designed their sleeping habits to work in harmony with the world around them. Now, imagine you're lying under the stars, the faint sounds of the Nile echoing in the distance. You can feel the gentle breeze against your skin, and the coolness of the night air is a welcome relief from the heat of the day. You sleep under the vast Egyptian sky, where the stars seem close enough to touch. In this moment, sleep becomes not just a break from the day's work. It becomes an intimate connection with the natural world, a deep alignment with the cycles of the seasons, and a way to tap into the peace that the changing seasons bring. Sleep, in this context, wasn't just an individual need. It was a collective rhythm that connected people to their environment, their agriculture, and the cycles of nature. The Egyptians understood that rest, like everything else in life, had its time and place, and that the changing seasons provided the perfect opportunity for rejuvenation. Whether it was through midday naps or nighttime slumber, sleep was seen as a way to stay in tune with the world around them, ensuring that they could continue to thrive, no matter what season came next. As we continue our journey through ancient Egypt and their profound connection to sleep, let's delve into the influence of the Nile River on their nighttime routines. The Nile was not only the lifeblood of Egyptian agriculture and daily life, but it also shaped the environment and ambience of the Egyptians' sleep practices. Imagine it. You're lying in bed, and the sounds of the river flow gently through the open windows, whispering a lullaby of ancient times. The calm and rhythmic flow of water became a natural soundtrack for sleep, deeply intertwined with the Egyptians' understanding of rest. The Egyptians lived in a land where the Nile was ever present, not just as a physical feature but as a spiritual and cultural force. Its influence extended far beyond agriculture and transportation. It also played a central role in how Egyptians viewed the world and their sleep. The river itself was seen as a source of life, a boundary between chaos and order, and an entity deeply connected to both their mythology and daily routines. The peaceful sounds of the river were not just a comforting backdrop to sleep. They were thought to carry the blessings of the gods, ensuring the restfulness and safety of those who slept near its shores. Historians still debate how much the natural surroundings influenced the quality of Egyptian sleep, but it's undeniable that the environment around them shaped their daily lives. The gentle murmur of the river was said to have a calming effect, and it's easy to imagine how this serene sound, combined with the cool air from the riverbanks, could create the perfect atmosphere for restful sleep. In fact, many homes and temples were built with open windows and airy spaces, specifically designed to allow the sounds of the Nile to fill the rooms and create a peaceful environment for rest. Now, picture yourself in this peaceful setting. You've just settled into bed, and the soft, rhythmic sound of the river lapping against the banks outside lulls you into a deep sense of calm. The cool night air flows through the open windows, carrying with it the scent of water and lotus flowers. You lie back, feeling the gentle sway of the river's movement echo in your body. It's not just the physical comfort of the bed that brings you peace. It's the connection to the eternal flow of the Nile, whose presence offers a sense of security and connection to the divine. In addition to the river's soothing sounds, the Nile's nocturnal environment had a unique impact on the Egyptian sleep schedules. The bustling activity of the day would slow down as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the darkness of night would settle in. The coolness of the evening brought a natural respite from the daytime heat, and many Egyptians took advantage of the quiet hours to sleep, recharge, and rejuvenate. The night, with its calm and cool air, was seen as a time to reconnect with the earth and the gods, to rest and prepare for the next day's challenges. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians had any formalized sleep schedules, or whether they simply followed the natural rhythms of their environment. However, it's clear that the influence of the Nile was integral to how they structured their rest. The nighttime, with the river's sound and the cooling air, became a time of reflection and spiritual alignment. Sleep wasn't just for physical rest. It was a time to reflect, to connect with nature, and to rejuvenate both body and soul. Picture the serenity of the Nile flowing through the night. As you drift off to sleep, the sounds of the water, the calls of distant birds, and the occasional rustle of the wind through the reeds are your lullaby. As you close your eyes, you feel the calmness of the river wash over you, easing you into a peaceful sleep. You're not just resting your body, you're sinking into the very pulse of the Egyptian landscape, feeling at one with the water that nourished the land and the people. In this way, sleep in ancient Egypt was far more than a nightly ritual. It was a deep, spiritual practice, intimately connected to the environment and the ever-flowing Nile, offering not just rest but renewal and connection to something greater than oneself. As we move forward in our exploration of sleep in ancient Egypt, let's take a deeper look at how the elite and royalty experienced sleep, particularly in relation to their burial practices and the concept of eternal rest. The Egyptians had a unique view of sleep that transcended the physical act of resting, extending it into the afterlife. To the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a continuation, a journey into eternal sleep. This sleep wasn't ordinary rest. It was a transformative process that required elaborate rituals, sacred spaces, and an abundance of comforts to ensure a peaceful and safe passage into the afterlife. Imagine being part of Egypt's elite, perhaps a high-ranking noble or a member of the royal family, lying in a tomb designed not just for your final resting place, but for your ultimate sleep. These tombs were carefully constructed and filled with items meant to accompany the deceased on their journey. Much like a sleeping person would prepare for a restful night's sleep, the dead were surrounded by objects that symbolized rest, protection, and luxury. Fine linens, perfumes, and even beds were included in tombs to ensure that the deceased would rest comfortably in their eternal sleep. Historians still debate the exact significance of these tomb items, whether they were purely symbolic, or whether they were thought to have practical use in the afterlife. But what is undeniable is that sleep and death were seen as intrinsically linked in the Egyptian worldview. Just as a pharaoh's night's sleep was considered a time of divine communication and renewal, so too was death seen as a sacred transition into an eternal state of rest, where the soul would be free to journey to the afterlife, guided and protected by the gods. Now picture this. You are a pharaoh, resting in your magnificent tomb, your body lying on a stone bed, surrounded by everything you might need for your eternal rest. The walls are adorned with detailed carvings, each depicting your journey to the afterlife. The tomb is filled with oils, incense, and sacred items, your favorite objects, food, and treasures, all carefully placed to ensure that you remain comfortable in your eternal slumber. Your soul will travel through the realms of the underworld, but in this sacred space, you are at peace, resting with the gods. The bed and surrounding items are not just for comfort. They are tools for your protection, designed to ensure that you will have a peaceful journey into the afterlife. This sacred sleep wasn't just for pharaohs or the elite. It was also a practice seen in the burial customs of many Egyptians, though on a less grand scale. Even common people, though not provided with the same lavish burial items, would often be laid to rest in tombs with small items for comfort, such as simple linens or small offerings. The connection between sleep and the afterlife remained a central theme across all classes, though the scale and luxury of the offerings varied. Historians still debate whether these elaborate burial rituals were more about ensuring physical comfort for the deceased or whether they were meant to aid the spirit in its journey. Regardless, sleep and death were intimately connected in Egyptian thought. The bed, the linens, the oils, all were part of the ritual that helped transition the soul from life to death, from the physical world to the spiritual one. Death wasn't simply about the cessation of life. It was about entering into an eternal sleep, one that required careful preparation. Imagine now that you are an elite Egyptian, resting in your tomb, your body prepared for eternal rest. The quiet peace of the tomb surrounds you, and you know that your soul will be protected and guided on its journey. The sacred sleep you are about to enter is unlike any sleep you have ever known. It is not just a physical rest, but a divine connection to the afterlife, a place where time is no longer linear, and where your soul will rest in the presence of the gods for eternity. The Egyptians truly understood the sacred nature of sleep and death, and their burial practices reflect this deep connection. They viewed sleep and death as continuous processes, not separate events. To sleep in death was to rest in the embrace of the divine, to be reborn in a world beyond. As we reach the final stages of our journey through the sleep practices of ancient Egypt, let's take a look at one of the most serene and tranquil aspects of Egyptian life: the quiet nights along the Nile. The sound of the river, the stillness of the air, and the calmness of the landscape created a perfect environment for rest. It's hard to imagine a more peaceful setting, where sleep wasn't just about bodily recovery, but about aligning with the natural world and the forces that governed it. The Egyptians were keenly aware of the soothing effects of their environment on their sleep. The Nile was central to their existence. It provided water for crops, a means of transportation, and even a sense of security. But beyond its practical benefits, the river also played a spiritual role in Egyptian life. The calm, rhythmic sound of the water as it flowed through the night was a natural lullaby, lulling both the body and soul into a peaceful state. Imagine lying down after a long day of work, feeling the cool breeze from the river sweep over you. The faint sound of the water's flow becomes a soft whisper, wrapping you in its tranquility. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians used the sounds of the Nile intentionally to aid sleep, or if the river's presence was simply a natural part of their environment. But there's no doubt that the flow of the water, combined with the peaceful surroundings, created an ideal space for restful sleep. The natural world around them, especially the Nile, was woven into their cultural and spiritual beliefs. It wasn't just a river. It was a living, breathing entity, essential to life and essential to rest. Now, imagine yourself lying down under the open sky, the vast stretch of stars above, and the stillness of the night around you. The air is cool, and the only sound you hear is the gentle rippling of the Nile as it flows beside you. The peacefulness of this environment envelops you, making it easy to let go of the day's stresses. The bed beneath you is simple, but the night around you is more than enough. You can feel the calmness of the river seep into your body, carrying you into a deep and peaceful slumber. In addition to the calming effects of the Nile, the Egyptians believed that sleep was a time for spiritual alignment, and their rituals reflected this belief. Sleeping in the presence of the river was seen as a way to connect with the divine forces of nature. The Nile wasn't just a natural resource, it was sacred. Its waters represented life, fertility, and renewal, and sleeping by the river was thought to bring one closer to these forces. Historians still discuss whether the belief in the sacredness of the Nile was a direct cause of the Egyptian sleep practices, or whether it was more a matter of cultural reverence for the river. Regardless, the fact remains that the Nile's presence, both physically and spiritually, played a crucial role in how the Egyptians approached their nightly rest. Picture yourself now, resting by the river, with the stars above and the water below. The night feels timeless, a moment of perfect peace between the world of the living and the divine. You close your eyes, and as you drift off, you feel a deep sense of connection, not just to the earth around you, but to the forces that govern it. This isn't just sleep. It's a spiritual journey, a moment to rest in the embrace of nature and the gods. In this peaceful setting, sleep becomes more than just rest. It becomes a ritual, a time to reconnect with the natural world and the divine forces that shaped it. The calm of the Nile, the stillness of the night, and the sacredness of the environment combine to create the perfect space for sleep, one where the body and soul can rest and rejuvenate in harmony with the universe. As we conclude our journey through the sleep practices of ancient Egypt, let's reflect on one final, deeply fascinating aspect: how the Egyptians viewed sleep as a bridge between the mortal world and the divine. Sleep wasn't just an escape from the demands of daily life. It was seen as an opportunity to communicate with the gods, to receive divine messages, and to prepare for the eternal journey after death. In this sense, sleep held both a sacred and a practical purpose, with each night's rest functioning as a doorway to spiritual renewal. The Egyptians had a unique understanding of the boundary between the waking world and the afterlife, and sleep played a central role in that connection. They believed that when you slept, your soul temporarily left your body and traveled to the realm of the gods, where it could receive guidance, healing, and visions. This wasn't a fleeting journey, but one that was carefully guided by the gods themselves. For the Egyptians, the act of sleeping wasn't merely a time of physical restoration. It was a spiritual journey, a passage between life and death, between the mortal world and the divine. Historians still debate the full extent of this belief. Some argue that it was a deeply ingrained part of Egyptian spirituality, while others suggest that it was more symbolic. What's certain, however, is that sleep was viewed as a time of profound spiritual significance, an opportunity to connect with higher powers and seek guidance for the future. As you lay down at night, you weren't simply resting your body, you were preparing your soul for the journey ahead. Imagine lying in bed after a long day, your body finally at rest, and your mind beginning to quiet. The night is still, and the room is dimly lit by the soft glow of oil lamps. As you close your eyes, you feel yourself drifting away, not just into a peaceful slumber, but into the realm of the gods. Your soul begins its journey, leaving behind the physical world and traveling to the divine realm. It's not just a dream, it's a sacred passage, a time when your soul is free to communicate with the gods and receive their wisdom. This belief in sleep as a sacred passage wasn't limited to the living. In their burial rituals, the Egyptians saw death as a continuation of this journey, and they prepared their dead for an eternal sleep that would take them beyond the mortal world. The tombs, with their treasures and sacred items, were designed to ensure that the deceased would be comfortable and protected in their eternal slumber. The soul of the deceased was believed to continue its journey, moving from one realm to the next, just as it had during sleep. Now, imagine that you are resting in your tomb, surrounded by the offerings and sacred items that will guide you on your journey. The bed beneath you is not just for comfort. It's part of the ritual that will allow you to make your transition into the afterlife. Your soul will travel through the underworld, encountering challenges and tests, but in your final sleep, you are protected by the gods and guided into eternity. As we conclude this exploration of sleep in ancient Egypt, it's clear that for the Egyptians, sleep wasn't just a biological function. It was a powerful, sacred ritual that connected them to the divine, helped them heal, and prepared them for the afterlife. Whether through their dream practices, their sacred rest rituals, or their elaborate burial customs, the Egyptians viewed sleep as a bridge, a gateway to higher realms, to wisdom, and to eternal peace. So, as we end our journey, take a moment to reflect on how the ancient Egyptians saw sleep as far more than a break from the day. It was a connection to the gods, a time for spiritual renewal, and a preparation for the next phase of existence. As you lie down tonight, remember that sleep in all its forms is a sacred experience, offering you the chance to rest, heal, and perhaps even connect with something greater than yourself.